Hello, and welcome to First Geek 411's book club, where tonight we'll be discussing Beren and Luthien by J.R.R. Tolkien. Yes. Yeah. All right. I'm distracted because Cameron just took all the U's out of favorite in our notes.
Google said it was spelled wrong. So
It's Google's wrong.
if you have an issue,
Yeah.
take it up with Mr. Google.
My notes. My computer was fine with it. Before we get started, you can find us on all the social medias as One Geek 411. Come chat with us on our Discord server or shoot us an email at 1stgeek411@gmail.com. Watch live on our Twitch every Monday night at 6:45 Mountain Time and find all our videos over on YouTube. Rate and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and check out our Redbubble store. I am Shanine, and with me I have Emma.
Hi.
And Chris.
Hello. I'm
and
here.
Cameron.
Hello.
All right. So this book is made up of several iterations of the tale of Beren and Luthien, shown in various drafts and forms, with some commentary from Christopher Tolkien, giving some history on Tolkien and the writing of the story of Beren and Luthien. While the details differ, the story is basically about Beren and Luthien falling in love, Beren being forced by Luthien's father to retrieve a very precious gem from a very evil being, and the heroic journey that entails. Christopher Tolkien writes, in an often quoted letter of 1951, my father called it the chief of the stories of the Silmarillion, heroic fairy romance. So, what are your first impressions?
I'll go as we're all jumping up a bit to get in. I don't know. It's fine. I think it was more interesting than good, just in the sense of it was interesting to hear like the thought process and kind of that like behind the scenes of like the writer iterating on their work. But overall, like I personally guess felt that there was going to be a lot more Beren and Luthien. And like it, I mean, I did audiobook for this, so like I also, may not remember literally anything that went on because I was trying not to die as I was listening to this as I was driving. And so like it just felt like the actual story wasn't that long. And so
it's one chapter in the Silmarillion.
Yeah,
but
it just seemed like a lot for not much actual story. But that being said, part of the interest is the commentary on it.
I agree. It was definitely interesting and to see all the different versions, but it's not something that I would have actively finished if I had just picked it up in any other situation, because I probably would have like just lost interest in kind of how repetitive it was, in the sense of like, and in this case it's the same character here, it's just he has a different name or whatever. So
I love these things, so I mean I figured it can be distracting, especially I couldn't imagine like with the audiobook, like getting a little bit of story and then suddenly it's Christopher's words taking over.
They did do different voices.
Oh, okay.
So there at least was that for like, but I will say that I do honestly think doing the audiobook for this is like the objectively wrong way to do this. Just because like you can't reference back. And so it would be like, oh, look at how this changes. Like, I don't know.
It's like, yeah. I can't go back there. But I don't know, probably because like I feel like, so yeah, this is the essential story. Like this is referenced It's one of the few stories that's truly referenced in Lord of the Rings as well. And if you watch the extended editions, you actually get to see that it get fully referenced. And but I mean, yeah, it's a little more studious because of that, because you're getting the commentary and things like that. But it is really cool. I do love the pulling from, so we get the like original kind of piece. So like through the three kind of eras that the story went through is a lot of fun. But I also love the verse portions from the epic poem, I guess you can call it. Better than Shakespeare, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think as with any Tolkien, if you're not used to the language he's using, it can be a bit of a slog to get through and to get fully immersed in it, just because the language can be difficult sometimes. I think if you're a Tolkien fan, like 100%, you're going to like it. If you're not that into Tolkien, it's probably not going to be that interesting for you.
Stick to the
Yeah.
Hobbit, Lord of the Rings. Like, that's
Which is exactly
It's
what
the
I've
truth.
done.
All right. I know we have discussed this on the podcast previously, but for anyone who is not aware, what is everyone's previous experience with Middle Earth lore and Tolkien?
For me, lore-wise, literally nothing really beyond The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. I got a little ways into the Silmarillion back in high school, but didn't finish it. So just the two main things, just overarching Tolkien-wise, both books and movies. So
For me, a little bit of everything. I don't own everything I want to yet, because there's certain compendiums that are hard to access and are super expensive.
Hmm.
But eventually, um, I will own them. But yeah, so yeah, obviously read all of Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, The Silmarillion. I own all of these expanded pieces so far, with the pre-order of The Fall of Numenor. Yeah, so yeah, I own this, obviously, Beren and Luthien, Children of Hurin, Fall of Gondor, or Gondolin. Yeah, I do deep dives regularly. Don't know any Elvish yet, really, or don't remember much.
Disappointed. Fake fan.
I know. What?
wah wah.
Yeah, not many people know Elvish, okay? It's rare. Maybe if I had someone to practice with, maybe I would remember
What
some.
I hear is you need to become friends with Stephen Colbert. And then
Yes.
There you go.
I'm just going to write him a letter. I really want to learn Elvish, but need someone to practice with. But yeah. Yeah, I'm a big Tolkien head.
for me, my first interaction was the animated movies. And so
From
I
the
definitely grew up
70s.
watching those back on like VHS and stuff. And so I
Good
enjoyed
old
those.
VHS.
Yeah. You know, when The Hobbit was just one movie, got him. And so, yeah, so that was my first interaction. And then like going through school as the Lord of the Rings movies came out. And then I think I've seen the first Hobbit movie, and the second one has been on in a room I was in. And I have not seen the third one. I've never read any of the books. The Hobbit's kind of been on my list for a while, and I've just never gotten there.
Whenever someone brings up the animated movies, what immediately goes into my head is Frodo of the Nine Fingers.
Hey, They had some killer bops in those.
They did. That song though, like just automatically is that right at the end, the ending song. Just and the keeper of the ring. Yeah. Obviously had an impact.
Clearly.
For me, I have read The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and eventually did make it through the Silmarillion and have seen all the movies.
I'm currently watching Rings of Power.
Yes.
Oh yeah, currently
Yeah.
caught up on Rings of Power.
I am not yet.
I think I'm an
caught
episode
up.
behind right now, but
I am
I have
an
some gripes.
episode and a half in.
I did not see it coming when Frodo showed up and stabbed Galadriel in the heart.
Oh yeah, you know.
she survives though, obviously. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Clearly.
Galadriel's an elf, so like,
Yeah.
you know.
Why wouldn't she?
Oh boy. All right. Any interesting facts from Christopher Tolkien's commentary that stood out to you?
I liked the comment about gnomes, of like specifically like how like going back and writing kind of as there's like now baggage around that word that wasn't really there when J.R.R. Tolkien was writing. I thought that was really interesting. It's kind of interesting to see these almost as like a process of translation, that like when you translate a text from one language to another, you are not just trying to literally translate it, but you're trying to adapt to the ideas and the changing in meaning of the new words in the new language.
Mhm.
So it's kind of funny to see that in a book that's like just over 100 years old, right? No, it was 30s that he started writing. Am I missing that up?
So almost 100 years old.
Yeah, almost 100 years old.
We will
And-
no. So this, he originally started writing this. So this is turning 105 this year,
Oh,
or
okay.
and from the original drafts at least.
Oh, okay.
So he started writing Beren and the original drafts for Beren and Luthien in 1917.
Oh, okay. For some reason, 1931 popped into my head, and so
So that's like the third portion. So like
Okay.
17, like late 20s, and then like 34ish, I think is. So yeah, we get the Tale of Tenuvial, the Lay of Luthien, and then kind of the final pieces. I think something like that. Yeah, 105. That's older than frozen food. Just saying.
and sliced bread.
I don't know about that, but
Betty White was older than sliced bread, so
Right.
yes.
Oh.
And Betty
It is
White
older
is
than
not as
sliced
old as
bread.
yeah,
this, so-
okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Is
That
that's
is
true. I don't know when sliced bread
honestly
came
my
around,
point
so
of reference for how old sliced bread is.
so what?
is,
People
uh,
just
you
weren't
won
cutting
Betty
bread
White.
like up at like just cutting bread wasn't a common thing. You just tore it. Is that what they were doing? Like
No, like they would
like
like
pre-sliced bread?
Pre-sliced
okay.
bread. Pre-sliced.
Yes.
But I'm just like
yeah.
but like
Sandwich bread.
sliced bread obviously existed before that because people probably cut it with a knife at some point,
Yeah.
People had not discovered knives.
or they just never thought to use a knife on bread until the 1920s.
I also, like Cameron, really liked the tidbit about the gnomes and that evolution from like where it started to where it is today and how that impacted it. Because I feel like there's a lot of that with this kind of Tolkien material where like a lot of the changes happen because in his free time not writing these, he was sitting there creating his random languages or whatever. So then the things he creates there then end up requiring that other things change and other things that he's written. So yeah, I just thought that was cool.
Like similar to what you're saying, Cameron, about gnomes, I also enjoyed from a letter in 1954. He said he greatly regretted having used the word elves, which has become overloaded with regrettable tones that are too much to overcome.
But now he owns that word. Like,
Yeah, had something like
Yeah.
come
screw
out.
every
like,
other cultural context of that term now. You will only further associate it with Tolkien's works and everything that's been inspired by it since. No, some of his letters are just crazy. He's like, oh, sorry you regret that. I love that, actually. I love
Yeah.
elves. Like in his later works, so like, so obviously we have, well, granted, it's not mentioned in here, but dwarves. How do you spell dwarves? The plural of dwarf.
DWARVES.
Unless you're a Disney person, in which case you just put an S on dwarf.
See, that's weird.
There's a trademark issue. I don't actually know. But
I feel like Tolkien just really didn't like putting S's on things because like everything he created. So like the Valar, that's the plural for, and then the Maiar. So like he always liked the alternative, giving things their own plural for the most part.
And he has thus influenced language.
He just liked language.
Yeah.
Another thing that I liked from the commentary was talking about sending his publishers new material after The Hobbit was released. It says, many years later, my father wrote in a letter on the 16th of July, 1964, I offered them the Legends of the Elder Days, but their readers turned that down. They wanted a sequel, but I wanted heroic legends and high romance. The result was The Lord of the Rings. I don't know. That just seems kind of crazy to me.
yeah, it is crazy that his like afterthought was like one of the most well-known books of all time.
Yeah.
Of it's like, fine, if you make me do this, I guess I'll write a classic. Like,
I suppose.
Well, I just also love that like Lord of the Rings kind of being an afterthought, but like it is the culmination of all these random drafts of everything he was working on prior. So he's like writing Lord of the Rings. He's like, you know what? I'm getting this story in somewhere published right now. So he includes he makes sure that this lore is included somewhere in there. And that's why you have three, like a stupid long book, essentially of 3 books. And
Yeah, I was going to say, didn't he want it to be one book?
yes,
They had him / required him to split it up into 3.
He also, like, the Silmarillion was pretty much done, and he wanted it to be published alongside as kind of like a addition to, kind of like a printed appendix to Lord of the Rings almost, but instead we didn't get the Silmarillion until much later.
Right. What was it like getting to see the evolution of one of Tolkien's stories?
So with this one specifically, I found out I do disagree with Tolkien in one area. I like cats.
Fair enough. Yeah, it definitely pegged Tolkien as a dog person.
Yep. I will also say that much better use of vampires and werewolves than Twilight.
I mean,
Who would've guessed?
obviously, you know.
no one could have seen that coming.
Wow, you don't say. I mean, I would have liked to see something like this done with chunks of Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, just because, like, having the like, you know, the final version or whatever, but then having an additional or separate thing. There might be one of these out there, there might not. That does this kind of thing with those, that sort of walks through Tolkien's versions of them, just because that's what I'm most familiar with. And given that there's so many things in Tolkien's worlds and mind, like, that would be nice to have a reference point and bouncing off point to like be like, okay, I've read The Hobbit, let's move on and like read, you know, this other book about some of the different ways he went about it or whatever.
There are some resources, especially relating to The Hobbit, because The Hobbit that we know isn't the original.
Yeah,
definitely
exactly.
Not. He went back and started editing again after Lord of the Rings to adapt the lore.
So like having like whatever it looked like before and commentary on like the things he changed in context
like,
of Lord of the Rings or whatever.
Yeah, and I like really agree with you, Emma. And like to me, where I went is like, you know how that like they have the Bibles that have like two different translations.
Yeah,
side by side.
That's kind of what I wanted. Is like the side by side of like, here's the pages, and like have like underlines or editor's notes or when things are changed between the versions. And so like you would then have like some chapters where one version went way longer than the other because stuff was added or taken out. Like I think that would be super interesting.
I also think it's kind of cool that like if you like, without the commentary obviously of Christopher and everything, you take these copies and you like kind of put the stories like in different eras of Middle Earth and everything. You kind of just get like this like, oh, like if you look at like the original story, like when he wrote it, that Beren wasn't human, like he was one of the Noldor or something along those lines. So he was an elf, an immortal elf as well. It kind of comes off like as being like an early work that's kind of a cover up that an elf would marry a human. And then you get a little more social, like these texts can exist within the overall world of things, and like just you get new iterations as new knowledge comes to light, much like with the Bible, like in the different eras of its creation. That's how I like to think of these different, the three different eras of Beren and Luthien, is that you just get it's like, oh, they are all technically canon. It's just that we get more information later on that's been corrected.
Mm-hmm.
The early people just got it wrong or covered it up because they didn't like something. And the same with like The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, like the way they're written and things, or the way, because they are supposed to be accounts as if Middle Earth was real. The Red Book. Yep.
Yeah, I think also as an author, it was cool to see how his writings changed, and like even seeing him go from like prose to poetry and like changing names and cutting out characters and adding in new characters, like how drastic some of the changes are. And I'm like, that's makes me feel a little bit better. Like he didn't just sit down and like pen these incredible things like
all in one sitting.
Yes.
One thing that he always did though was name his characters, Janine.
Yeah. Janine.
Oh, we'll get there.
Got to work on that one piece. And he names a lot of characters.
Let's see. Character A interacts.
He's really good at
character
naming.
A.1.
Although I think I think Chris mentions it like within the first iteration, like so we have Tevildo and like his little henchman, like the names of his like of Tevildo's henchmen, like Meow, like they're all like Meow related.
Yes.
I loved that too. I'm just like, okay, fine.
Yeah. But yeah, it makes me feel a little bit better that, like, hey, first drafts are rough. Because I think, yeah, it was also mentioned that the first draft of this actually no longer exists. It was almost entirely erased. And the Tale of Tenuviel is the earliest existing version, but not like the first. So it's
Yeah,
comforting.
it was like literally erased. It was written in pencil, and an eraser was used to erase it.
Yes.
He actually
Really?
erased his sheets. Yeah,
Wow.
during his drafting. Yeah,
So it's like the painters who would like paint something and then like if they didn't like it, they would paint something else over it.
kind of. Yeah, yeah. And so like I love that. Like it's not like it was lost or like he burned it. No, he literally wrote it in pencil and just like took an eraser to it.
Yeah. And I think similar to what you were saying, Chris, it reminded me a lot of how like folklore changes throughout tellings as well. What did everyone think of the prose versus the poetry?
I am not a poetry person, so I had a hard time getting through the poetry parts just because I like had to try and figure out what the heck was going on 2/3 of the time. So I liked the prose a lot better, but to each their own.
I like that both exist, honestly, because
Yeah,
kind of you like you get that like oh like we have kind of historical recording, and then we have the bardic telling,
yeah,
and I really like that. It's like somewhere like they're singing telling the story of Beren and Luthien, and it's just a bard in a tavern singing it. But then I also like you can go find like a more scholarly account. Really like that idea. Uh, but I do have a soft spot for the poetry, just because I don't even know. Why I prefer it. Like I'm not saying it's like great poetry necessarily, but I don't know. It is a epic piece, and he does maintain like all the aspects of you know. I I don't even remember poetry terms. Iambic pentameter.
cadence
It's not
and
an iambic pentameter. I know
whatever.
that, but
Yeah,
I remember that term from English class at some point. I know this isn't, but like I don't know. Like his consistency within writing that is amazing, especially for 100, like over 400 lines, and
It's
pretty much
over
straight.
1,000.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
There's a lot of lines.
there is. Or sorry, like over 400, like verses, I guess.
Oh,
1,000 verses. Or something like that. That's a lot of verses, and that's more than one line. That's like 500.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
So for me, I was like, oh, the prose is cool, but like once we got to the poetry, I'm like, okay, Tolkien, I see you. Like kind of as y'all have just mentioned, like that the length of it. Like I think that it's super interesting. Like I Chris mentions it at some point where he's like, yeah, and then he got stuck on this one part for several years and couldn't figure out how to like we had to reach out to ask for help on this one section. Or I thought that was super interesting. And like
It's definitely writing poetry. It's like, I can't think of a word that rhymes with orange.
yeah. And yeah, like this was the type of thing where it's like I really appreciated the story being in prose first. Like that definitely helped me. But then like once it was poetry, I was like, okay, this is, even though again, it's not like, I wouldn't say it's like groundbreaking poetry by any means, but like just the, like, that's like the mad respect for like telling a great story in poetry form.
Yeah.
Like for that much, I think is super impressive. And,
He
again,
did
I think
both.
it just really
That's
shows
what's
off.
really is.
What?
He did both. That's what's
Yep.
ridiculous. It's not like someone took it and adapted, like a poet took it and adapted it. It's like, nope, Tolkien did that too.
Yeah, I was when you said you were listening to it on audiobook, I felt like the poetry parts would have been the
Cool.
best in audiobook form. Um, I I really like poetry, but I also really struggle with it in that I have a much harder time visualizing what's going on
Yep.
while I'm reading it. Like it takes a lot more work for me to like figure out the scene. So I think I did prefer the prose, but there were some sections of the poetry that were very beautiful. Like it was obviously very well written, but
And incomplete.
I ran into that. That's the same issue I ran into, basically.
yeah. But yeah, I think it is very fun that it exists in both forms. All right. Did you have a favorite version of Beren and Luthien?
I liked the first one because it was so simple and very like. I felt like there was a sense of there's a section where it almost felt like Rapunzel, but not.
Yeah.
So the first one.
Yeah, I am a big fan of the first one. I do. Tovildo, it just cracks me up. I don't know why. This cats and dog war, but like ultimately, the final version, just because like when you are becoming familiar with everything, you're like you see all the lines leading through the end of the third age, and you're just like, oh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I like the first one kind of because it's not really connected to anything.
Yeah.
Like I like the idea of stories like not having to connect to everything else. And so I really liked the first one. And even though like realistically, I don't know if I would have gotten Morgoth had it not been for Rings of Power. But like but I liked this for the first version because it is just completely its own thing in the sense of like there's no call forwards, there's none of that. It's just this person who is a hostage of a cat, and
Yeah.
then Luthien has to get a dog and save him, and
Yep.
that's just kind of what happens.
That's how it plays out.
Yep.
I will say also like the first version is amazing simply because like he is like it like his introduction, Baron's introduction to Luthien is literally like it's that setup. Granted, that's the same throughout all the versions. It is like a recall of a very personal date between those two among the Hemlocks, and ultimately like very close to where they're currently buried, which is super cool. Like in terms of like relating it to his real life, I love that we get that little piece too.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I'm a little torn between the first version, The Tale of Tenuviel, and like the final version as well. Because obviously the final version is the one that like Tolkien liked best, and it's like the main canon of the story. But I don't know, I think I just liked Luthien better in The Tale of Tenuviel. She felt cooler to me in that one.
Just face it, Luthien's awesome regardless.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know. I feel like we got more of her in that one.
I agree. Like they focus a little like there's a few other things that happen in later versions that causes more of the focus to fall on Beren. Whereas early on it's like, oh, Beren got stuck. Here comes Luthien. But I do like the more complete version because you're also focusing a little more on like these elven politics that I hate. It's like y'all suck. Elves are not necessarily good people. That's all I'm saying. As much as you wanted to be one as you were when you were a kid,
Yeah.
maybe it's for the best that you weren't.
And did you have a favorite moment from any of the versions?
I really liked the fight between is it I guess Juan, the dog,
Human?
and just said it, Tavildo. I really liked their fight because it's like, oh no, he's hurt. What are you going to do? It's just like the most classic, like, what, he wasn't hurt the whole time. He was expecting
Wah,
this.
wah.
And it's just like I love that part. Um I just like how goofy it was.
A real Trojan horse there.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked that part.
I mean, my favorite part is also my favorite quote. So I'm going to share it now because it made me laugh. But it's from the first one. Tineville was, I think, talking with Melko, but he's like, why are you here? And she's like, knowest thou not that I am Tineville, daughter of Tinwellint the outlaw, and he hath driven me from his halls, for he is an overbearing elf, and I give not my love at his command. And it made me laugh because it's basically just her saying, my dad sucks that he kicked me out. But make it Tolkien. And I wrote, even Tolkien includes teens saying their parents suck. So that was my favorite moment.
Her parent, it kind of really does.
So, yeah.
I do like it's so Luthien travels farther west a little bit, but recruits help, but once again it's betrayed by the another elf that wants to marry her, and they imprison her, and then but we get good boy that just betrays his master and just like, you'll suck, and takes her and then takes her on her quest. I love Huon so much. and then later, like, literally attacks his master because they get ambushed on the road or whatever. I'm just like, good boy. I also do really enjoy the fact that Luthien just like doesn't really fight or anything, but she puts an entire fortress to sleep and just like, okay, we're done here. Let's go.
That's all we had to do, guys.
It's like,
Put him all to sleep.
it's like the elves have been having problems trying to attack this fortress for forever. And they
She
just
literally just went, here, hold my beer.
they literally just walk in together. Yeah, they're undisguised, so they sneak in essentially. But then she gets undisguised and it's like, oh, let me perform for you. Sleep. Also, just remember that for D&D, because just remember, sleep is a very powerful spell. Next time you're playing D&D.
Thanks for the heads up, Chris.
Obviously inspired by Luthien. Just saying.
Yes, so to that end, my favorite part is probably what Emma called the Rapunzel part in the first one. Just hearing how she created this cloak of sleeping magic. Very sneaky about it.
For context, she got grounded to a treehouse by her parent.
Yes.
Because she wanted to run off and save Beren.
But can we also just say it's the same dick that threw Beren on, like, it's like,
yeah.
She trusted this guy again for whatever reason, and he once again narked on her to her father.
Yeah.
No wonder why you're in the friend zone, dude. You suck.
Yeah, I love it. She's cool. She's strong. She does what she needs to do and wins by sneaky magic.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Any least favorite parts?
I think the whole quest for the Cimmeril, it's just like, oh man, this escalated quickly. Like it just like again, I think the actual like story of it is fine, but it's just the like 0 to 60 of the whole thing of like, especially with it being Morgoth in the end.
Yeah.
And it's just like this is like, oh man, we're going for it. Like
Sauron's
shout out
actual predecessor.
yeah,
you
shout out
know?
to you, regular guy. Obviously he has help, but like shout out to you. But yeah, that it was like the actual escalation of it, but the actual again the actual story of it is great, but just like the
Right.
it's just like that type of thing of like clearly the dad is trying to give what he thinks is an impossible task, and it's like, dude, just calm down. I'm gonna need you to chill.
Pull back on the reins a little bit there, buddy.
Bad dads. He's like, fine, I'll do it.
Bet.
Yeah, bet. Say I won't.
So within that, there's some crazy things. Like, so obviously, like within the overall context of the Silmarillion, like they end up calling on a lot of oaths, which is also the point of this story, is the callback and referencing of like multiple kinslayings that happened among the elves due to the Silmarils and the Oath of Feanor. But like that's a big theme in this, but I'll talk about that later because I'm sure there's a theme question in there. I'm not looking, but I have a feeling. I don't really have any parts I necessarily disliked in this. Yeah, because it's just, I don't know, it always felt kind of like a lot of fun for the most part. And we get a lot of insight into kind of the afterlife aspect of elves and men within this story, which I find really cool. But yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I think my least favorite part is just all of the names. Just half the time I'm like, I don't know. I don't know who this is anymore.
Yeah.
I should have used the name index a bit more, but
There are a lot of names.
Again,
That's
used audiobook
That's a
can
problem.
confirm.
Yeah.
No idea
I
who
will
any
say
of these characters
research. So
are.
there's the loaderproject.net, I think. They have some really great resources and like trees. I'll show you guys it toward the end, like when it comes up, because there's like a full tree that's really important to the story and it's really cool.
all right. What are our thoughts on the characterization of Beren and Luthien?
I liked that Beren is the one that gets captured and Luthien rescues him.
Yeah.
Like,
Well ahead of its time, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like Beren is definitely the damsel in distress for that portion of the story, and so I liked that a lot. Again, it just seemed like this wasn't what I was, or it was like one of the few things that happened that wasn't what I was expecting. And so I liked that a lot. Luthien as a whole, I mean, to all the stuff that y'all said earlier, is super cool. And so I liked a lot of her characterization for it. I like that she definitely is like the powerful one, and so which makes sense.
Like,
but
more powerful than you expect. Like too, like we'll get to her history too, because like it's not really like doesn't go into a ton of detail about her. Well, like combining all of her like the information we know It's just like, oh, that makes sense.
She's got stuff going on, apparently.
Sorry, what was the question again? Oh, characterization. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Like, again, like Beren is mostly kind of meh. Um, but I think that a lot of that is just Tolkien not wanting to write about himself.
So what you're saying is this was essentially a self-insert piece of fiction within his universe.
Yeah, like literally, like there's so many aspects kind of about it that are directly related to his actual relationship with Edith.
Fantastic.
It's like even like in his letters, it kind of mentions it. Like, yeah, he never called Edith Luthien, but he always acknowledged her as that to him. Like definitely, he's like, I'm definitely dating up in today's terms.
I think that's the best characterization. Is that this is a self-insert piece of work by Tolkien.
Yeah, but also Baron's importance is that, like, again, and it's kind of this general theme that you see throughout all his works. That's like, it's not necessarily the powerful elves or like lords and kings. Granted, Beren is a lord. Don't get me wrong, but he has no kingdom because it's been completely destroyed.
Because reasons.
Because of evil people.
Yeah.
But like, he ends up just being a dude that falls in love with an elf, but enacts a crazy line of change in the world and in everything. And it's just that theme that it's just these small, simple people that enact real change or can have the biggest impact on the overall world landscape.
Yeah, I think not necessarily a lot of time is spent on their characters. It's definitely more plot based. But I mean, that's kind of what you're getting into with like a heroic epic tale, anyways. So, were there any other characters that stood out to you?
Him and his best boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, best boy.
Was the MVP.
Yes.
It really was.
As always, we have to go with the animal, right? Also, in the first story, really all he had to do was bring a laser pointer.
Yeah.
Would have been good enough. Could have got him. If only.
If only. Write that in there.
All right. And any thoughts on the various villains that we see? Tevildo, Thu, Morgoth, any others?
So in the final, it becomes Sauron, obviously, the first lieutenant.
Mm-hmm.
And the poetry references Thu, which literally eventually becomes Sauron. But and then, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's cool that we do have those sort of threads of, you've got Morgoth, who's Sauron's predecessor essentially, and like his chain of actions essentially lead to then what is the plot for Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, by extension of Sauron / Thu which is just really cool. Is just to get a sense of that, like how that all came to be.
I honestly wish it would have stayed as Tevildo or Thu. Um, I kind of, from a story perspective, I like the idea of this being like Sauron, like using air quotes, because he's probably like thousands of years old or whatever at this point. But like,
so
but-
Sauron's a Maiar, so
right. And so it's, but I kind of like that idea there of it's like this is well before he's the big bad, like he's still kind of coming into his own. And like I said, I don't know if I would have really thought this if it wasn't for Rings of Power, but I feel like having Morgoth here is just like a crazy escalation. And I think it would have been cool to have seen like these smaller threats that are involved in the story. But overall, I think they're all fine. Tevildo's probably the most entertaining, but get wrecked, cats.
Also, Morgoth is a Valar, so he's one of the original sub deities, like, or demi gods of the world. Also, the most powerful, technically.
Interesting.
Yep, and he breaks away from Iluvatar because he's essentially Lucifer. Like he's pretty much a direct, like,
Correlation.
pretty much, yeah. Like he's like, I don't agree with what you're doing, or I want to make my own things. And then like Sauron was was a Maiar that very much valued like order and like kind of perfection, which is ultimately how he became corrupted, is because he saw by means of subjugation would be the easiest route to his world vision. Sorry. Not related necessarily to this, just they're in the story, so context, I guess.
Yeah, I think having read the Silmarillion and obviously being familiar with Lord of the Rings, like Morgoth and Thu were the most interesting for me because I was like, I know what's going on here. But
bad people.
And speaking of villains, I will read one of my favorite quotes that is part of a very long speech that Thu makes. Why laughs he not to think of his lord crushing a maiden in his hoard? That foul should be what once was clean, that dark should be where light has been. Whom do ye serve, light or murk? Who is the maker of mightiest work? Who is the king of earthly kings, the greatest giver of gold and rings? Who is the master of the wide earth, who despoiled them of their mirth? The greedy gods. Repeat your vows, orcs of Bauglir. Do not bend your brows. Death to light, to law, to love. Cursed be moon and stars above. May darkness everlasting old, that waits outside and surges cold, drown Manwë, Varda, and the sun. May all in hatred be begun, and all in evil ended be, in the moaning of the endless sea. I don't know. I feel like that was the section that stood out to me the most out of like the whole book, just because it sounds like so beautiful being in verse, but also uses a lot of language that usually would be associated with like the good guys, but it's just been slightly twisted
Which is
to
what
be
Sauron
about the
is.
bad
That's
guys.
so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's good.
It's like, think about it,
I
because
liked
yeah,
it.
he was a good Maiar, but he's just like, this world needs order. It's so crazy because he doesn't see himself as a bad guy.
Yeah. So I liked that. And I think a big theme that we see in Beren and Luthien and in basically all of Tolkien's writings is good triumphing over evil, even when all hope seems lost. So we see the pure things, the good things, love triumphing over evil. Um, any thoughts on this theme?
I thought
I'm just
we're all
laughing
just like
at
hanging
Chris
out watching
for
Chris
adjusting this. Yeah.
as we just pause.
That was an entertaining moment.
Yeah. I think it was good. I kind of liked how this was brought in here, and I don't think this is anything like revolutionary in terms of like where we're at with this. But one of the things I always do love about Tolkien is it's crazy how much he just sets the tone for like so much of modern fantasy. And so it's one of those like it's kind of hard to. I mean, this is true for like most classics across any medium. Where like you look at it and now you see all the places that it has gone, and it's always crazy to look back. Rip Chris. It's crazy to like look back and see where it started. And of course, like he's not the first one to tell these types of stories, but like, he's definitely the first one to, or at least considered one of the first ones to put it into like that modern conscience, especially for fantasy. So
Yeah, totally agreed. And I've always liked, like personally, I've always liked those sort of evil characters who like aren't doing evil for the sake of doing evil. They're doing like whatever it is they're doing is because they genuinely think they're doing the right thing and the good thing for the world. Because I feel like that's a lot, not all of like real life, but there's a lot of, you know, even our current world today where a lot of people do. It's almost like good intentions, terrible execution. Obviously, Sauron isn't entirely that, but I do always like sort of things that explore that of like this bad guy genuinely thinks he's trying to, or what he's doing is, you know, aimed towards a better world, but it's really actually terrible.
Chris, what do you think? Oh yeah, I completely agree.
Here's a fun Lord of the Rings fact.
All right. Well, hopefully Chris will be back in time for this question because I know he had some thoughts on it. So, did you notice any other themes, biblical or otherwise?
Love. Romance.
It's Romance Month.
It is Romance Month. Whatever it is that looks like, you know.
One that I saw is kind of the idea of like the hidden or invisible being revealed. There's a bit of that going on, even with like Tevildo not actually being a cat, like they're just in the body of a cat. And then you have the story. I think it's Beren where they all dressed up as orcs, and like they just kind of get got by the magic of this person, and that like reveals who they are. And so there's a bit of that going around, and I kind of liked that it's not just the villains that have secrets that get revealed. I thought that was cool, and kind of the and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's like a big thing about like basically like our fears and like being scared of people like tricking us, causing us to not trust others. That does happen, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, just again, I audiobooked this, so I'm not sure what actually happened. But like I liked that a lot. I think that that's very interesting, kind of the idea of like a self-fulfilling prophecy of like if you believe like you can't trust other people, you're going to not trust them, and then it's going to cause this issue. Well, now no one around you is trustworthy.
Yeah.
I hope that works.
So I thought that was really interesting.
He has returned.
We'll see it for how long. I don't know what's going on.
Okay, quick. This is the other themes question.
Yeah, we stalled for you.
The themes question. So like throughout the Silmarillion and especially this we get kind of your word is important. But also we get this kind of theme of like ongoing things. There's lots of oaths that are being called upon here. Essentially, Thingol calls on an old oath with when he calls out trying to reclaim the Silmarils, or even a Silmaril. So he calls on an old oath of Feanor, which led to lots of kinslaying and a lot of death, which is kind of why he calls on his own doom or his kingdom's doom later on. But also we get Beren calling on the oath of friendship with F name.
Finrod.
Yes, Finrod.
I know
with
that
Finrod.
because I was
Yeah.
clicking through the wiki earlier trying to make sure I had names ready to go, and I still had that tab open.
Which is an old
5
oath
F
also.
names.
So Finrod's dad, I want to say, established the oath of friendship with Beren's father when they had their kingdom established and had given him a ring, which like there's a thing that goes on regarding that. But then it's a kind of, so he calls on that, and that's ultimately like it results in some death there, but like them holding true to those oaths was a big thing. And we also see that later on in Lord of the Rings with the undead army that gets called upon. That's them fulfilling an oath that they turned back on. And I love oath. Like the oath themes throughout his works are also
Great.
really good. Yeah. It's a good piece, good part. But also an oath made in good faith instead. Like there's some bad oaths that just cause wreak a lot of havoc. Darn it, Feanor.
All right. Is there anything else that stood out to you or any quotes that you would like to share?
I shared my quote about stubborn teenagers.
I'm just bad with quotes.
I got no quotes, just audiobook.
It's really hard to pull quotes from audio. It's like, oh, that
Yes.
sounded really good. I'm not going back to
Yeah,
the
I'm gonna literally never remember any of
I'm
this.
not gonna hunt that down.
Yeah, it's still like I googled Beren and Luthien quotes and was like, nope, none of these. And so that's all I got.
All right. And I read my quote as well. So, a fun closing question. If you were to take the form of some kind of monstrous beast to try to trick Morgoth, what Tolkien creature would you be?
I would be that dog.
The werewolf, the big wolves.
Yeah.
Oh, there is one quote. Sorry, I was just thinking about it. So like so Beren and Luthien return to Thingol before they get married, after they get evacuated from the area, and he loses a hand. I do love that I love that call out. He's like, oh, trust me, there's a Cimmeral in my hand. Thingol's like, well, then show it to me. But my hand isn't here.
My hand is not attached to my body.
I love that. It's just like, because he is holding on. Sorry, that is one of my favorite parts. It's like, I did it. I did the thing. But about that.
Yep.
and then Thingol's just like, fine, you can marry her. So good. Okay, sorry.
Creature disguise.
Now, I would go old school. I would definitely be cat. I'd go in as a cat. Cat lieutenant.
I mean, I want to say the big elephant thing.
Oliphant.
Obviously not going to work for being sneaky. But like
No.
when I think Tolkien animals, I go to that and the creepy spider, which I definitely don't want anything to do with.
Shelob
Yeah.
or Ungoliant. Or
And
their
so,
kindred.
so I guess of the more reasonable options, I'm in the dog camp.
I
Yeah.
would say going in as like
Let's
a
be good
giant spider, like they are powerful creatures because their power, like at least Ungoliant's, was even like made Melkor worried because he couldn't actually control her, which is actually that's exactly what happened there. But
Yeah. Like now that you bring it up, I super not a fan of giant spiders, but I feel like that would be a very tricksy option.
it's like I'd probably do that just because then I don't have to deal with the spiders.
Yeah.
But, well, what if there's like a spider dance and you don't do it right, and now they know you're not a spider? It just seems like don't be spider.
I
and
mean,
then
if
seems
they know the
nice.
spider dance and you don't, I would be questioning the kinds of things they would be spending their time on.
I mean,
You
like,
know?
I mean, it could be a handshake. Like, I don't know
A
what they
secret
do.
handshake? The spiders have a secret handshake here, Cameron.
I don't know. Have you ever
mean-
met a giant spider?
No,
I've read
I'd
about 'em.
rather not.
they,
They're
I don't know.
they
what
mostly
they're
keep
up
to themselves. Like I don't see them in groups really, like outside of.
Well, and we're just trying to trick Morgoth, not
True.
other giant spiders.
Yeah.
So, all right. Any final thoughts on Beren and Luthien?
I mean, lots. You ready? Okay, you guys have the stream up, right? Once
Yes.
everyone else goes through their final thoughts, we'll
Oh.
go in a little. Okay, we got some details going to here.
I'll say for me, this is the type of book that like I really wish it, like if I was taking writing classes, like this is the type of textbook I would love.
Yeah.
Again, I definitely, as I've said at the beginning, I feel like the audiobook for this is like objectively the wrong way to go. Again, other than the poetry, I guess, like the poetry was very cool. But just in terms of actually getting to like flip back and forth and see stuff, wouldn't recommend audiobook. But
Makes
yeah, if I was a teacher, I would love to use this as part of a class.
You can go like get an entire
I
degree
enjoyed
just
it.
on Tolkien stuff. So
Yeah. I enjoyed it overall, but like, I don't think I would read it again. And it felt a bit slow.
Yeah, I think it was overall enjoyable. Definitely geared towards a Tolkien fan.
Yeah.
So if you are that, you will enjoy it. If you are not, read something else.
start with the Silmarillion and see if that gets you on the Tolkien path.
Start with the Silmarillion.
In terms of like going deeper into Middle Earth.
Oh, yes.
Sorry.
It's like,
Like
do
if you
not.
are interested in the super fan route, start with the Silmarillion.
you go.
after Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Obviously, I'm making the assumption that if you are looking to go deeper down the rabbit hole,
You start with
you've,
those.
you've at least done the basics. Or if you've only seen the movies, then and you want to watch the extended editions, then read the books. Okay, so final thoughts. So there's so much actually like going on beyond the scenes here. So obviously we have Beren, man, and Luthien, elf, supposedly, but she's actually. So if you're got my tree up here, so we got Luthien and Beren, right here. In the
What
middle.
is this? A tree for ants?
Zooming in? Okay, so Luthien is daughter to Thingol, Elf King, okay, and Melian, a Maya, so essentially a wizard, if you want to think of it that way, because that's what the wizards were, but also not a wizard, but just
Got it.
crazy. So
Aren't they kind of like the angel?
yeah,
figures?
they would essentially kind of be they're servants to the Valar. Yeah, and so they're essentially angels. So so like that contributes to her kind of known beauty and things, and but yeah, then so Luthien and Beren do end up having a child named Dior, marries Nimloth, but they have 3 children: Elwing, Ellered, and Ellerin. Okay, you see? Oh, I guess that's hard to see. Okay, let me get there. Okay, Elwing marries Erendil, and they have 2 children. Okay, Elrond and
I know him.
I know
right,
that one.
right. So this
I
is
got that reference.
and Elros.
Yeah.
They were twins. Okay, so but they are considered half elves. So from there, they were kind of given the decision. You can go the path of elves, kind of the immortality path, or the path of man. They each want one or the other. Okay. So then we get this very long tree from Elros. Oh, let me get farther over for you guys. Elros and his crazy family tree. So this is essentially the Dunedain. These are like they have the elven ancestry, but the path of man, and we come way. Oops. Way
Is that what
down.
Aragorn is?
And we end up kind of toward the end of the line with Aragorn the second.
I know him too.
Yeah. It's just like I feel like I know where this is going.
Arwen, who we know is daughter of Elrond. Okay, so that's kind of the base. So we get like kind of the 3 elves marrying man situation, but all starting with Beren and Luthien. What's even crazy? So this is also what bugs me about Rings of Power. Okay. But Elrond married Celebrian, who is the daughter of Galadriel and Celeborn. So Arwen is Galadriel's granddaughter. Sorry out there. Crazy, right? So cool. Okay, but okay, so the thing that bothers me, Rings of Power. Celebrimbor's in there. And he's super old. But technically he's younger than Galadriel.
Age is
That
just a
makes
number,
sense.
dude.
I'm just
Bye, Chris.
it's just video. It's just video. I'm still here. Because Galadriel's known for being born in Valar under the age of the trees. Yeah, like Celebrimbor isn't born until, but okay, we're talking about Beren and Luthien. So that's I just Beren and Luthien's line. Like I wanted to show this because that is why, and also like the direct allusion of how Aragorn meets Arwen, and he also like at the time, so he meets her in a forested glade, and he's actually singing the Lay of Luthien when he meets her, and he actually when he runs into her calls her Tanuviel. I like the callbacks. Okay, cool things, cool things.
Fun facts.
This has been Fun Facts with Chris.
We
Tolkien
love
lore.
fun facts with Chris.
All right. This has been our book club on Beren and Luthien. Thank you for reading with us. Our next book club will be on October 27th, and our spooky read that we voted for on Twitter, the ghost book, is The Atrocities by Jeremy C. Shipp. This might have been the spookiest option.
Yeah, I've been informed that I chose poorly as a voter for ghosts and someone who does not like spooky. So here we are.
Here we are. It is a novella. It's like just over 100 pages. So at least if it's going to be spooky, you'll get through it fast. I do recommend going to the Storygraph app and checking out any content warnings for this if that is something you feel you might need for this type of a read.
I didn't know this was a
I've
thing.
never even heard of this.
Yeah.
Wait, what? Sorry, what was
The Storygraph app.
Storygraph app?
It is similar to Goodreads
Sponsor
in
us.
keeping track of your books that you're reading and stuff, but a little different. It gives you fun graphs and things. And the reviews I like better. They give you more options. You can select different things when you're reviewing, and it gives you different breakdowns of books and stuff like that. So
Cool.
I do like graphs.
yes.
Nice.
So if you would like to prepare yourself for the things that will be spooking you.
Yep, I have successfully checked, and I am indeed going to be spooked. I will be reading this during the day. Thank you.
So sorry.
Do the audiobook. Drive at night.
Nope.
Yeah.
That's a hard no.
Cameron is not here for
No.
that.
I don't live my life that way.
Cameron does not live life on the edge.
Yeah, all treat, no trick. That's how I live my spooky season.
All right. Thank you again for joining us. We are First Geek 411. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Come chat with us on our Discord server or shoot us an email at 1stgeek411@gmail.com. Check out our Redbubble store for sweet, sweet merch. Watch live on our Twitch and find our videos over on YouTube. Rate and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. I am Shanine. You can find me at The Hoot and Howl on Twitter or Hoot and Howl Tales, TALES, on Instagram.
I am Emma. You can find me at I Am Not Prepared with an I on all platforms.
I'm Cameron, and I'm Humar Whittle on all platforms.
And I'm Chris, and I'm not so foreign on all platforms. Portioning.
Read a book. Yeah, y'all don't have to brag.
Play a game.
Just a little bit. No. Wash your hands.